Hello and welcome to another Victoria 3 video. This time we are going to be taking a look at the recent meet and greet that the Victoria 3 team did with the community, where they basically asked for a bunch of questions and then they answered them. What we're going to be doing is having a look at those questions and those answers and just going through them so that you don't have to read them yourself and you can just listen to me read them for you. I'm sure some people will find that useful. Whatever, let's just get into it. So, question 1. What was it like watching people beg for Victoria 3 when you were already working on it? So the answer by Mr. Nibbles is very exciting and naturally pressure to live up to the expectations. Is it possible to turn the USA into an imperial monarchy in Victoria 3? So, by Ofoloaf, any country can be turned around politically. I'm quite proud of what monarchist America appears as on the map, personally. And I believe Ofoloaf is also American, which I find that quite interesting. How extensive are the production chains compared to Victoria 2? Are there more steps or intermediate products, or does the process work differently altogether? Martin Onward says, I would say the production chains are a step up from Victoria 2 in terms of complexity with the addition of production methods. Won't be giving too much detail on that for now though, but of course there will be a dev diary on it at some point. What day of the week will we be getting dev diaries? For now, we can't promise a specific day, but they will be released on a weekly basis. It'd be nice if it was like before a Wednesday, so it would be easy to fit into the no CB schedule. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Will there be mission trees for nations in Victoria 3? And if so, which nations can we expect to have a tree at the start? So, this one would be quite interesting. No mission trees or focus trees, as the society building aspect of the game means that we don't want there to be a handful of correct paths to take a nation. There will be a mechanics to encourage, but not railroad, historical nation formations though. That is very, very interesting. No mission trees at all. That means that only, I guess, Victoria and Stellaris don't have mission trees. Very, very interesting indeed. I personally enjoyed playing Victoria 2 multiplayer, even if I had to use third-party tools to make it possible. But will the multiplayer experience be made more approachable and stable in Victoria 3? So it's based on the same multiplayer tech as Imperator and Crusader Kings 3, so yes. I'm not sure if you're aware, Mr. Kaiser Johann, sir, but the multiplayer tech in Imperator and Crusader Kings 3 is a step down from the multiplayer tech in EU4. It is not as good. It is inferior. It has very much gotten better in very recent times, but it is still not as stable as previous games. And as I have been playing a little bit of Victoria 2 recently, with third-party tools, I can say without a shadow of doubt, right now, I think Victoria 2 is a little bit more stable than Imperator is, and I haven't tried multiplayer Crusader Kings 3, so I can't say on that one. Will there be economic crashes? Answer, yes, and sometimes they will not be just because of player mismanagement. Supply and demand within markets and the results chosen by the player and AI nations can see economic crises form on a national and international level. Very nice. Vicky 3 the project you are most proud of? Is Vicky 3 the project you are most proud of working on? So Mr. Nibble says yes, and I've been part of all the PDS games since 8 years back. So that would be would that include EU4? 2013? Yeah, I think that probably would include EU4. I don't know. But yeah, that's a very interesting answer. If you've been part of all of them, and Vicky 3 is the one you're most proud of, that's pretty huge. What are the dots in the sea on the screenshots? Are they trade routes? Can we raid or blockade a country, their economy in war? They're shipping routes. We're not ready to talk about that yet, though. Interesting. Okay. Will the game be more approachable as someone who has not played the previous installments in the trilogy? I wouldn't call Victoria 3 like the third in a trilogy. Yeah, it's like the third game, but a trilogy kind of says to me there's some kind of continuity, and I don't see that being the case in any Paradox game. So the intent is that it should be more approachable without losing the depth that the previous installments has. Will Vic 3 have multiple start dates? No additional start dates wouldn't completely rule out adding early dates like 1821 or 1822 after release, but we want to focus on the core century of 1836 to 1936. Okay. Will each market have its own prices? Each market will have its own price for the goods bought and sold on them. This is on a basic level of by supply and demand within the market. You may find the goods in your domestic national market are more expensive than those abroad and seek trade to take advantage of this. We'll go deeper into this in a broader scope in the Viconomics panel, which I haven't watched yet, but I plan to right as soon as I finish, this video. How will anarchism work? We don't want to go too much more into detail on this right now, but the anarchism we're aiming to simulate is something akin to confederation of self-governing communities with extensive local rule and weaker central power. Interesting stuff. Will we get formable nations like Imperial Federation, for example? There will be formable nations, but we will not go into details for now. I feel like there's going to be quite a lot of this. What is the hardest thing to program in Victoria 3? Not sure about hardest, but one of the most time-consuming is, for example, the markets and economy, or just the general user experience. So, I haven't played Vic 2, but I'm interested in Vic 3. How detailed will the tutorial be, and will you already pick a starting nation? Will there be tooltips like in CK3, where there is an in-game wiki and you can just search up things you wish to know more about? I really like that feature in CK3, and it helped me quite a bit in learning the new mechanics and what certain things meant. Also, when will the Zeppelin link work? So, the tutorial is, for obvious reasons, worked on very late in development, so I can't give you details here, but our intent is that the tutorial should be flexible enough to accommodate several different suggested countries, from small to medium size. The tutorial should be enough to teach you all the basics you need to start to play, but more advanced understanding about the game is something you're intended to be able to arrive at through your own exploring tooltips, the Wikipedia articles, and just seeing the consequences of your actions. As for the Zeppelin newsletter sign-up bonus, it's a technical problem that's being worked on, but will probably take until tomorrow to resolve. And if you're wondering what the Zeppelin model thing is, it's this thing that you can see right up here. I like it, so I'm putting it in the video, 'cause why not? Basically what it is if you sign up for these newsletter, you will eventually get I assume a link so that this model will replace the standard Zeppelin model in the game, perhaps? Something along those lines, I'm not sure. Do you use any history books in your research? No, none. Not one single history book used in the research, clearly. So Ofalov says he's brought a small library to Stockholm when he moved there, built it up even further after moving there, and I've been referencing so many of them for different things. There's no single book that was referenced more than others. At various times, I've gone through books like Barricades, The War in the Streets of Revolutionary Paris, 1830 to 1848, The Victorian Economy by Francois Rosette, The Baldwin Locomotive Works, 1831 to 1915 by John Brown, Demanding the Impossible History of Anarchism by Peter Marshall, and gosh, the full list would take up far too much space. How extensive is the cultural trait system? Is it just relevant to laws and assimilation? Yeah, the cultural traits have an effect in terms of discrimination laws. There aren't cultural buffs or debuffs or anything like that. So that makes sense. A culture is not going to be inherently superior to another culture. Humans are humans. There's very little difference between us. How we treat other people based on, those supposed differences means way more than oh, I am better because of inherent cultural blah blah. No, that's, yeah. It's good to not have cultural traits, other than for laws and, realistic shit, not fantasy shit, First of all, do you guys have any limits on what you can answer, or is it anything goes and we can ask anything? As for my main question, what time period will the game span over? Why would you be asking things that have been clearly answered already? There's some things I can't talk about yet, but yeah, 1836 to 1936. We've already known that for quite some time. Good job. Do we have a specific flag for when a type of policy is in power? It's quite a neat system about this that goes further than Vic 2. Your flag can change to reflect not only your system of government, but other factors such as who your overlord is. So, to answer what this kind of is about, in Victoria 2, there is a metric fuck ton of flags. basically, if you are, say, Great Britain, or I guess United Kingdom, and you change away from being a monarchy into being a communist nation commune thingamabob, you will have a different flag. If you are, say, France, and instead of being a republic, you decide to bring back the monarchy, there's a flag. If you want to be communist, there's a different flag. If you want to be fascist, there's a different flag. There are tons and tons and tons and tons of flags for every single nation, for every single different type of government that you could potentially go into. So I guess that is what that one is referencing there. In the economy panel today, it was mentioned that river systems contribute to infrastructure. Will navies be able to navigate and blockade rivers? So, no brown water navies, I'm afraid, but we do intend for navies to have a potentially strong impact on trade. So no navigable rivers. I feel like that's okay. I mean, as long as you can sail up the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal, and I would be relatively fine with that being the only river that is navigable. That makes sense. This isn't really a time for sailing up rivers, I imagine. Although, if you're talking about just trade, I imagine the likes of Austria would get quite a lot of use out of sailing up and down the Danube River for trade. But it depends on, like, are you going to be able to build dedicated trading vessels? Because in Victoria 2, you have only got transports and warships, as far as I'm aware. Those aren't really what I would imagine seeing sailing up and down the Danube. How, or has, immediate fan reactions affected any plans for the game going forward? So, yes, fan reactions so far has actually played a part. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. Feedback from the community is very important to the team in general, and to me as a user experience designer specifically, I already have a pretty chunky laundry list of things I want to take a closer look at based on the things people have discussed this weekend. Very interesting. Good stuff. Hi, very excited to learn more about the game. Will there be a good variety of formable and releasable nations? Yes. How will the Great Power rankings be decided? GDP, apparently, as far as I'm aware. Countries have prestige, which is basically sum of all their power and glory, economic might, military might, etc. Each rank, like Major Power and Great Power, requires a certain amount of prestige based on the global average, so there isn't a limit on the number of Great Powers, for example. Okay. Oh, well, that's interesting. I did not realize that. Also, I thought GDP was supposed to be a part of it. I'm fairly sure I heard that, but I guess not. Prestige is more of a thing. But prestige is some of the other things rather than, like, in Victoria 2, prestige. It was a makeup of your prestige, your industrial might, and your military might, and those numbers combined with probably algorithms upon algorithms decided where you sat in your Great Power ranking. Okay, so prestige is now the determiner, and other things make up what goes into your prestige. That's okay. That's fair enough. How will you sift through the flood of community feedback to get useful feedback? Lots of coffee and evenings browsing forums, and awesome colleagues to compile it for us. And watching videos from the likes of me? Nah, probably not. Will there be mechanics for exploration, such as the discovery of the source of the Nile? The search for the source of the Nile is one of the expeditions among several others that you can do in the game, as it is in Victoria 2 as well. What is your favourite part of working on the project? The awesome team we have and the passionate fanbase. The fanbase is pretty passionate, can't be denied on that one. Will nations have unique ideas or anything else to tell them apart? So, nations will play very differently and require different playstyles, but since the whole point of the Society Builder is to shape a country into what you want to see, we want to be careful about the extent by which we hard-code playstyles into certain countries. One thing that can be different between countries is the specific nature of the interest groups, for example, the ideologies of their state church. So it doesn't look like we're going to have ideas or heritages or any of that kind of malarkey. That is very interesting. I like that answer. I like that answer a lot. Like, you don't really need ideas when every single country will play different based on the makeup of their government, for example, and what ideologies are their people are espousing. I like that. I like that a lot. Has everyone on the Vic3 dev team bought or created their own Victorian-era clothes to dress in? Bought sort of implies that we are finished. This is a continual effort by a few of us, and we enjoy dressing up in the period get-up, as you can see from the panel. Some of us have been trying to style period-appropriate hairstyles as well, to varying degrees of success. Nice. Cosplay is fun. Buildings have been mentioned for economy material production. Will artisans be in the game as well? There isn't artisans per se, but early methods of producing manufactured goods are guild-based instead of capitalist-based, and use less complex production chains. Alright. Would you say this is the most difficult and or complex game you've worked on so far at Paradox? It's definitely the most complex in most aspects, also the most rewarding to work on. How are you doing today? Apparently, awesome. Lovely stuff. What's the game aspect you guys are most excited about? Economy, warfare, other, or a specific feature? So Starnan says definitely the economy for him. I know they're not going to be playable yet, but can you give us some of the names of the decentralized factions that we might interact with? I heard there will be some Native American tribes and Amazonian tribes, for example. We got decentralized nations across the map. There's Noongar in Australia, the Nez Perce in the Pacific Northwest, and the Azande along the northern reaches of the Congo, among others. Will there be some porcelain production in Europe like the famous ones in Meissen or KPM in Prussia? Yes, porcelain is a luxury trade good that can be theoretically produced anywhere. Lovely. Or nice. Was there any moment where you almost accidentally revealed you were working on Vicky 3, or have you all been tight-lipped the entire time? Nope, quite tight-lipped, even when people tried to get me drunk in the last PDX con. Cool, yep, moving on. What will the map be like? So would it be CK3 style, where it's a paper map, obviously 19th century looking, until you zoom in, or something like Koi 4? I mean, you can see that if you look at the panel talking about the art, because, we already know that. We've seen it. It's paper when you zoom out. Yeah, sure. How are you, dear dev team? Hope you're fine. I think I can speak for everyone on the team that announcing the game has given us all a big morale and energy boost. Seeing all the reactions have been fantastic. Nice. Can I pick a nation to play as? Yes. Sure, okay. Why the switch from Roman numerals to Arabic numerals in the title? Because if it leaked, no one would believe it. I think, obviously that's probably not the correct, not the correct answer there. I mean, CK3 doesn't have Roman numerals. They use a 3 as well. I don't know. Well, obviously I'm not a part of the dev team, so I can't answer what the real answer is, but I don't think that one is it. Let's put it that way. Since there are 4 ticks per day, does this mean that we will get money every tick or just daily? Money gets deposited into your treasury at the end of the week. I like that. I like that. That's cool. It's different from the monthly stuff. Seems, it's nice that they're using weeks more. Because I don't think any other Paradox game that I know of, at least, really makes use of the week as a significant breakup of time, so I like that. That's pretty cool. Will Infamy work like in Vic 2, or is it going to be reworked? Instead of Vic 2 Infamy, we have Threat, which is more akin to aggressive expansion in that it is not global-based, but based on the area where you're threatening. Who cares about it, whether you're taking land from a recognized or unrecognized nation, etc. Okay, cool. Can revolutions of rising expectations occur? AKA, will a slowdown in economic growth lead to wealthy pops growing discontent? If pops suffer economic decline and a drop in standard of living, they can radicalize. And if you're not careful, it can lead to revolution. So it's less about slowdown in growth and more like if there's a dip, that's going to be the painful one. Are transport costs incorporated into the price of goods, i.e. buying goods that are nearer is cheaper than buying them from far away? There are mechanics and costs for the transportation of goods, such as needing infrastructure and or a merchant marine to bring them to market, but not going into more detail on that right now. What map modes are currently planned? Will we see more or less? One of the main goals of the UX for Victoria 3 is to tie information more tightly into the map. So yes, you will see more map modes than what we've previously presented so far. Vic 2 had a metric ton of map modes. It was like 20 or so for all kinds of things. So yeah, it'd be nice to get a kind of more map modes is better. You know, I'm fairly keen on my map modes. Why would you recommend this game to someone who's never played Vic 2? I would recommend it as a country builder game on its own merit, rather than having needed to play Vic 2. I have played very little of Vic 2, and I'm definitely very excited. I don't need anyone's specific recommendation. I'm excited all on my own merit. Thank you very much. Will countries try to go into debt in Vic 2? Like in the real world, to try and move money into their... Okay, so specifically aiming to go into debt. Fair enough. Deficit spending is meant to be a very valid strategy in Vic 3. Interesting, very nice. I wouldn't have expected that, but it makes sense. I'm not really an economist, though, so why would I have expected that? As a fan of the revolutions in 1848, are there plans to model them? Would they be specifically modelled, or would they be an emergent result of the game's other systems? I can answer that, because we've been told this kind of thing already. Emergent systems would determine what happens. Things like the American Civil War can be completely avoided and won't be railroaded if you manage to, you know, fulfill the conditions for there not to be an American Civil War. Railroading is bad, okay? So, by Mikhail Anderson, I think it's the lead game designer. In general, our approach is to model these types of things as emergent mechanics, and Revolutions is definitely not going to be driven exclusively by historical events. Having said that, many historical events will be triggered by the emergent game state, but manifest as events or event chains that you'll be able to recognize from history. But historical events might not occur in the same place and time as they did in real life. So you get the American Civil War, which was objectively about slavery, maybe happening in Brazil instead. If the conditions apply there. I actually don't know much about Brazil in this time period, so I can't say if that's the case, but you know what I mean. The revolution of 1848, which I actually don't know what that refers to, could happen in a different country if the conditions for it are, you know, correct. So emergent gameplay is just better in all cases, most of the time. One of the things you're allowed to talk about, what do you think is the biggest and most fundamental change in gameplay, style, or focus from Vic 2? So, you'll hopefully be able to sit down and enjoy the game without having to watch 18-episode YouTube tutorial series. Yeah, no, getting into Vic 2 is... It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. And it takes some time. No, this is a good answer. Will it be possible to stay an absolute monarchy to the end of the game without suffering from major instability? It will have challenges, but if you keep your people happy, anything is possible. Good, fair enough. What is the difference between constitutional and regular laws? They're the same thing, you have laws and institutions, basically. Favorite nation so far? Sweden or Greece are my go-to nations for Kaiser Johann, although there is new exciting releasable somewhere in Britain, but won't talk about that. Is it Cornwall? It's probably Cornwall. Or Wales. It's probably Wales. Or Scotland. Or I guess in this time period, Ireland. Possibly North. Look, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Is the combat system going to be modelled more on the Vic 2 combat system, or will it be different? As there have been quite a few questions regarding wars and combat in Vic 3, this will be a quite general answer for all of them from Starnan. We will be talking about wars and combat in a future dev diary and will not be answering questions regarding it for now. As I've seen comments over the last 2 days that there might not even be wars in Victoria 3, I'll say that there are and will be wars in the game. Who would... I do find it incredibly funny. I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a tangent here. I do find it incredibly funny that people make these wild assumptions based on nothing. If there are, I personally haven't seen it, but I believe Starnan, if he has seen it, if he's seen that people have said, oh, there's not going to be wars in Victoria 3. Like, where are these people getting this information from? Because that's dumb. Don't be dumb. That's fucking stupid, that is. On the Wikinomics panel, I still need to watch that. One screenshot showed that it takes a certain amount of time to enact a change. Can you try to enact multiple changes at the same time? No, you can only enact a single law at a time, so if you want to reform rapidly, it'll be important to get a strong government that backs your agenda, though it can be a valid strategy to reform more slowly to avoid revolution. I believe this is down talking about the different laws that you can pass or change, and they won't be click button, instantly change law, which I'm in favour of not having that be the case. Am I going to be able to observe? Yes. I like it. Quick question. Let's go. Keep moving. Political personalities are going to be a thing, like Bismarck or famous generals, intellectuals, etc. We have historical figures scripted at GameStart across the globe, and we're still looking at who can fit well into further players' games. Okay, lovely. I don't know why I tripped over that, but whatever. Is weather purely visual, or does it affect gameplay? Regular weather will not affect gameplay. I would argue, or I would posit, that this is a for now or on release. I can imagine weather probably being a thing later on down the line in a future update, perhaps. I don't know, but maybe. Yeah, maybe. States are the main thing we interact with for politics and economics, yet we can also split provinces from states via stuff like treaty ports. What determines which and how many pops end up inside the treaty port, and which will stay inside the rest of the state? If a state splits or a province shifts from one part of the state to the other, we determine what resources and pops move between them using semi-proportional math to make the final split make sense. Okay, so the pops are not modelled on the provincial level, I think, is what we're hearing there. They're modelled on the state level, and if you split a province into a new state, then algorithms happen to determine how many go over. That's okay, that's interesting. All right. Will the Dismantle Empire CB make somewhat of a comeback? It was a huge core of the late game Great Wars. There's a special diplomatic play to cut a highly threatening nation down to size, which forces them to give up everything they've recently conquered or subjugated. We might also have a sort of late game war goal similar to Dismantle Empire, but not looked down at this point. When designing decentralized countries, have you consulted with members or descendants of those communities and cultures? So yes, Offloaf says that they've made efforts there. We've already had some very good feedback and ongoing conversations. This is really important. This is something that E4 recently came across when they did their Leviathan update. In the initial release of Leviathan, the situation in New Zealand with the natives there, the Maori, wasn't really very good. And there was a brilliant thread where several members of the Maori community, if I'm saying things wrong in that regard, if it's not Maori community, if that's wrong, I apologize. I don't know specifics. Either way, there were several Maori that came forward and said, look, you got this, and this wrong. The surnames here are wrong. The color doesn't make any sense for this. The name for this country is completely, like an exonym maybe. And they went ahead and they took on all that feedback and they changed it. So full credit to the team for doing that as well. So, can Mario Lassan expand on what his role a production director means? So, as a production director, the role, besides being the manager of all the producers in Studio Red, is that I'm also one of the signs of all the production plans for both CK3 and Vic3. Okay, so Vic3 is in the Studio Red label that was recently split up in PDS. Okay. In other words, if Martin is the king, I'm the power behind the throne making things actually happen. Cool. Do you consider adding, in DLC maybe, currencies for different countries and markets? No, the pound is just objectively the superior currency. We don't need anything other than the pound sterling. This is clear. So, I cannot speak for future, as DLC is not my place. The current situation is an abstraction similar to how economics is usually talked about. Each nation does have its own currency and its value, but it's abstracted to the value relative to the international currency of the time, which was, of course, the pound. What feature or system would you say that you're most proud of in Vicky 3? So, Kaiser Johan says, it's a hard one to answer. One thing that's significant improvement from our previous titles is to enable treasury predictions to update whenever any action is taken, so you get immediate feedback rather than waiting for the end of the week to see how it plays out. That's really, really nice. I would say that Imperator actually kind of does that. It doesn't show on your top bar, but if you go into your economy tab, you will immediately see the effects of whatever change you've just made. Usually when it comes to trade, if you, say, go to war with a country that you've traded with a lot, if you go into your economy tab, you will see change immediately. So maybe it is something to do with the Gemini layer on Clausewitz that's allowing that. I don't know. But it is nice to see, that immediate feedback to changes that you make. I'm just wondering to what extent it would be able to interact with pops in this game, right from Stellaris to Crusader Kings 3. Right from having pops to having non-pops. I would argue that... would Stellaris have more interactable pops than Imperator? I'd say probably because they individually have jobs, then probably they would be. So there's no direct interaction with pops in Victoria 3. It's just not scalable. It would either make playing small countries boring or large countries overwhelming. Instead, the player interacts with the pops economically through buildings, like industries and barracks, and politically through interest groups. And of course, everything the player does affects the pops in an indirect manner. Good answer, I like that one. How are the colours for the political map chosen? It's a mix of approaches for country colours. Sometimes we try to use similar colours used by the same countries in our other games, just to keep the same vibes, and other times we've picked colours that just seemed more aesthetically pleasing with the map as it looks right now. Sometimes, occasionally, we pick something new just for the glory of chaos. Yellow Prussia. Prussia, yellow. I agree. I don't agree. Yellow Prussia is a meme. We already know, of course, as well, that Prussia is actually going to be blue in the game, so, all those people asking for Prussian blue, you and I have got our wishes. It's great. So, can you tell us more about culture as the finer arts like theatre, opera, great thinkers and the like? Can you focus on that as a nation to earn prestige and so forth? Yes, investing in culture and art is a way to gain prestige. Lovely. Will finance and stock markets be somewhat modelled? Trade centres, financial districts is a type of building, but I won't go into details on that right now. In CK3, you can click Tab to open up the little thing that gives you suggestions about what you should do. I found this to be very useful. Will Vic 3 have something similar? Yes. There will be a current system similar, but not identical to the one in CK3. Okay, so we have seen that in screenshots as well. Do I need a degree in economics to understand how economy functions in this game? Hopefully not, but it certainly helped me in QAing it. Good answer. Good answer indeed. And a bit of a flex there as well from Alastorn. Will historical figures pop up in certain areas, such as certain people lead focus groups or being the spearhead behind certain revolutions? So there's no occult and spiritual movements, but I'll make it a version of Sunset Invasion for Vic 3, but more Lovecraftian in nature. Sure, why not? I don't know if this came up yet. Will canals be a thing before railroads make them obsolete? Oh yeah, because canals are totally obsolete. Right now, I see, immediately I thought of like the Suez Canal, which is clearly not obsolete considering how much that Ever Given ship screwed the world over for a while. I think he's talking about the canals inside a country, which actually is a really good point. I don't know very much about other countries, but England has a magnificent series of canals that are still used quite heavily today. Not so much for trade and commerce, but they definitely used to be. And yeah, the railroads did kind of make them a bit obsolete, but they were still used fairly extensively. You could load quite a lot onto a ship, let's put it that way. They weren't big ships, of course, if they're just canals, but they were certainly very, very useful. And, canals in Britain and making use of the extensive waterways. Like, there's so many rivers in England. It's been a thing we've been doing for thousands of years. So yeah, I'm interested in this one. Given how close railroads are to the start of the game, some countries already have the tech, we didn't really find a useful niche for smaller canals. Though of course we have the big canal projects like the Suez and Panama, and rivers are important for pre-railroad infrastructure. So basically, what we should be saying here is Britain starts with early railway tech called canals, and no one else does. Something, because Britain needs a leg up. They're only little, just a little island nation off the coast of continental Europe. It needs a little bit of a leg up. Yeah, it might be the number one great power at the time, but it's by the by. It's by the by. How big of a role will alternate history play, or will the game follow a more historical path? Giving the player the power to change history is crucial to the game, and occasionally the AI will deviate quite substantially as well. But our goal is that you should never feel like the game is just random. If the AI is doing something uncharacteristic or deeply ahistorical, it should be for a very good reason, and you, the player, should be able to discern what that reason was. Good, I like that answer. Will there be any representation for the various occult and spiritual or religious ideological movements that occurred during the period, and will they impact cultural power? Okay, I think this may be the answer. We had this answer earlier. It didn't really fit, so I think maybe we've just had a crossing of the wires here. Okay, so there's no occult or spiritual movements, but maybe maybe. We've seen quite a few new pop types in what's been revealed so far. Should we expect to see more of that in the coming dev diaries? So our very first dev diary will be about pops, and there will be certainly more coming in terms of showing off pop types and their niche. Lovely, I'm so looking forward to that dev diary. I love me some pops. I really do love me some pops. Alright, so will there be different levels of subject states? We've heard about adding nations to your market, but are there tiers of subjects such as vassal, protectorate, etc.? So a puppet is a less autonomous version of a protectorate, so yes, definitely there will be different ones. And the final question that I have to drag this up to see, there we go. How much will we be able to influence the cultural makeup of our empire? Conquer somewhere with a different culture, and boom, you've affected it quite significantly. We'll be able to select specific accepted culture on top of the primary culture. So, primary culture is intrinsically linked to the country tag, while what cultures are discriminated against based on your laws in relation to those primary cultures. For example, if your country discriminates on a racial basis, cultures that do not share your primary heritage trait is discriminated against, while in a nationally supremacist country, all non-primary cultures are discriminated. Okay, that's interesting. I do find that, they're not shying away from the shitty parts of history. So, hearing that, that's pretty good answer. And that actually brings us to the end of the answers that we have so far for this PDX meet and greet. So yeah, I am quite happy with all of that. I do think we've learned quite a bit, and well, I'm looking forward to seeing more of what we can expect in the game. I'm looking forward to the dev diaries. I'm looking forward to more videos from them showing off more different things. As soon as I get this video edited and uploading, I'm gonna go and watch that Wikinomics and see if there's anything I can glean from there. I'm just super excited for all things Victoria 3. I'm hyped. I hope you are too. And with that, will leave you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.